All right. You ready? Yep. Go. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's great to be back here at St. Andrews. This is our first hybrid meeting back since November. The last time we met in person was in November. We're grateful to be back. Thank you, John, for being so hospitable and helping us get set up. We're actually starting a couple minutes late because we're still working through some of the technology bugs of doing Zoom and in person, so we appreciate your patience. So just to remind everybody, we started 2 months ago recording our meetings on YouTube, so we can post it on our webpage and people can watch the meeting if they can't join us live. So we're going to be, you can check it out later, and for those that miss it. I'm just going to go quickly through the agenda, David, if you don't mind shifting the slides. So first we have Ms. Kendra Green here, who's the Executive Director of the Elizabeth River Trail. Then she's going to give us some updates on the latest happenings, what's going on with them. And then we're going to shift focus over to kind of a schools-based theme for tonight. So Ms. Tanya Bassine is here from the school board. She's one of our neighbors here, obviously. And we're going to have the principals from both Blair Middle School and Taylor Elementary School, as well as the PTA presidents from both schools to talk about what's going on in the schools. So without much further ado, Kendra, I welcome you up here. I'll give her a quick introduction. I'm sure she's going to give some of her own background, but Kendra is new-ish as the executive director of the Elizabeth River Trails. And the thing that we just continue to hear great things coming from the ERT, and we're proud to be such a core part of the ERT here in West Ghent, and we're excited to hear what's next. So Kendra, over to you, and we'll bring the presentation up.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm really happy. This is, I think, my second Civic League. So I'm on the Civic League tour, and really happy to be doing so because you all are really, the community, the people that live along the trail are really the heart of our trail users, and we really appreciate you. So you can move a slide. So I don't have my colleague here, but I am happy to report that I have a colleague. So I started in October. In fact, Monday was my 6 months on board. So still learning. I will answer any questions you have, but know that I am still learning and trying to unpack all of the complexities of this 10.5 miles. But I'm super happy to be in the trail world. I have a background in nonprofit management, conservation and recreation, and spent 2 years, most of 2019 and all of 2020 in the Virginia Service Conservation Corps, serving with AmeriCorps and Virginia State Parks. And it was at that time where I was like, this is it. It's taken me a winding path to get here, but these are my people. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so this was a natural transition into this position. So I was a one-woman show for the last 6 months, and then I just hired 3 weeks ago an events and volunteer coordinator, Lily. So she's really going to be instrumental in helping, gather volunteers for the trail and helping us execute.
She's talking about the trail.
Thank you. So speaking of events, I get to talk to you on this week when we have our biggest event of the year on Saturday. So Celebrate Trails Day is this Saturday, April 23rd. It's a national event from the Rails to Trails Conservancy. This is its 9th year, and we've been participating since the trail was a thing. And we usually like to tie in that celebration with something that is happening new on the trail. And this year, we're super happy to be holding a ribbon cutting at our newest trailhead, which is the Water Street open space near Harbor Park. So if you've not been all the way out to kind of that farthest part, in the last leg of the trail, there's a beautiful open space. It's a community gathering space. And it was a former brownfield site that has now just been really rehabilitated to accommodate like any coastal flooding and just provide a gorgeous scenic views of the Elizabeth River. So save the date for that. We're doing our ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. Your very own Councilwoman Doyle will be speaking along with some other city officials. And there's going to be just all kinds of vendors and tables and community partners there. We'll be there till 1 o'clock, but the whole trail is activated that day. So come out to the trail. The whole purpose is just to get people on the trail on Saturday. So please come out. We have that same day, you can see a botanical bike tour that you can register for. And the Hermitage is offering, they'll have their docent doing garden tours that day. There's lots going on. I also wanted to highlight May 10th. This is Give Local 757. If you've lived in this area for a while, you might be familiar with this. This is when all the nonprofits in the area really come out and try to have a day of giving. This is the Elizabeth River Trail's first time participating in that. And we are specifically raising money for something that is going in your backyard. So at Jeff Robertson Park, the much beloved park, we are finally getting ready to break ground on the Glow Line, which is this amazing luminous path that will stretch. So the current path that you all ride will soon be the Glow Line. So we're working hard to raise the final bit of money to make this dream a reality. So please consider supporting us on May 10th.
Is going to be the Glow
I also
Line.
like specifically mention that day because I'm going to be on, it's a 24-hour fundraiser and I will be on the trail from morning to night,
So in other
going
words,
from
the kids-
NSU all the way
and
to
the
the
kids will
port,
go in and probably
live
come
every
home.
hour. And I will be at Jeff Robertson Park at 2 p.m. So I'd really love to see any residents out there, like come, we'll do a little Facebook Live. That would be amazing.
And we'll do some Facebook.
And then that same in May, we also have the Keeping History Above Water Conference is happening here in Norfolk. And the trail's really excited that one of our conference proposals got accepted. So again, we're going to be talking about how the trail really partners with the Office of Coastal Resilience to combat sea level rise and protect our history. Because we are literally at the front porch of sea level rise on the Elizabeth River Trail. Okay, and then you can just skip to the next one. Okay, so here's the beautiful Water Street open space. So you can see these magnificent views of the water, our working waterfront and the Berkeley Bridge. We installed 2 picnic tables. Our first ADA accessible picnic table is right on this amazing corner right by the water. Benches, trash cans, and bike racks. And you can see it's the widest part of our trail. We're envisioning farmers market and food trucks. There's space for yoga, just really a community gathering space. So I hope you all can check it out. Thank you. Okay, and this is I did a whole day of events. This is a lot to go over now, but I'm sure the presentation can get shared. So there are lots of things to do at the open space, and then a choose your own adventure map for how the trail will be activated the whole rest of the day. Thank you. Okay, so here's the good news. So we've got Jeff Robertson Park. So you may have already seen in November, we installed kind of phase 1 of our trailhead, which was the play equipment. It's actually like a dynamic parkour course, and I'm hoping that the neighborhood children are enjoying that. I usually see folks climbing on it whenever I'm out. So that was installed. We're working towards phase 2, which will be again the Glow Line, working on having our trailhead shelter like we have at Plum Point Park, public art, all of the things we envision for the trailheads. We anticipate having 11 trailheads along our 10.5 miles, and we're doing them in phases. So Jeff Robertson Park is on the agenda. Next. So yeah, again, parkour equipment. And then we have the Norfolk Garden Club. There's this huge kind of area in front of the Weyanoke Sanctuary where they have completed phase 1 of a massive planting project. Phase 2 will happen this fall after the Glow Line gets installed. And it is outstanding. I mean, I've seen the plans, I've met with the gardeners, and it's just an incredible opportunity to beautify the space. So we're super excited to partner with them. And then these are just kind of some renderings that were inspiration for the glow line. This is literally made with a glow stone. It's a luminous material that absorbs the sunlight during the day and emits a soft glow in the evening. So we anticipate it just being really, really magical spot to stroll through and then really help with that connectivity between, it's very dark there. So, and then this is an actual rendering of what it'll look like. It is being stenciled with a fiddlehead fern design to really kind of enhance that natural element with the bird sanctuary. It's gorgeous, y'all. We want this to happen. We're very excited. The RFP has been awarded. We just are kind of waiting for that final push to get through. And then I did provide you some samples of literally, this is what we laid out along Monticello Arcade, all of the stencil work to figure out the path and the pattern of the fern. We did extensive testing for the glowstone. This is what it looks like in a controlled environment, and that was outside at Jeff Robertson Park using our pavers. So very cool process. Give local, I've talked a little bit about that. Final push. Yeah, just if you could come, I'm sure like by 2 o'clock, I will be like just ready for a friendly face. So please come out to the park and find me. Yep. And then our Trail Ambassador program. So I mentioned I'm 6 months on board. This has been something that is, I want to rejuvenate and really get my hands around. So if you're interested in being a trail ambassador, we really welcome you. We're going to hold an interest meeting, I think this fall is when I'll be able to kind of really get that together. Just if the vest means you care about the trail, you know, it's not a huge time commitment, just 4 times a month, walk or bike the trail and do a report. Some information on training. There's a date in there and I don't remember putting that date in there. So we're just gonna say fall 2022. Stay tuned. Yeah, and then finally the Elizabeth River Run 10K. This is our 2nd year partnering with Tidewater Striders to bring that awesome race here in Norfolk. It shifted from Memorial Day to Labor Day due to the Patriotic Festival. So Labor Day weekend, Sunday, September 4th, our 10K race. So please register. There's an amazing after party at the port, which will be very cool. Yeah, so follow us, subscribe to our newsletter if you don't. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kendra.
Yeah.
I did have a question. So
Sure.
I read in the news recently that we're considering expanding to the east.
We are.
Are you ready to share anything about
I
that?
can talk about it.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting. I can talk a little bit about that. So I know you all probably are trail lovers currently. So our existing 10.5 miles runs from NSU to the port. We are really working on that connectivity between Harbor Park and NSU. There needs to be a lot of improvement there. So that's kind of our next effort. But we had our strategic planning session for the future of the trail, and we literally mapped it east. We did several bike rides east and planned how it would go. So essentially, kind of from NSU, that Park Avenue area, the plan is to kind of follow as close as we can to the Elizabeth River, following the Norfolk Southern right-of-way, all the way to kind of the old Norfolk Southern point at Newtown Road. So it's literally, we started the Elizabeth River Trail along the river in Norfolk. We want to finish it along the river in Norfolk. So that's the Norfolk connection. And then we would hope that our good friends in Virginia Beach are able to fulfill their vision of completing their trail, which would run from Newtown Road to the ocean front. So I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but the vision is like we can ride from basically the naval station to the ocean front with all of that connectivity. But we have mapped it. Right now it is in Transit's hands. So HRTPO and Transit are reviewing the maps, doing a feasibility studies. We need their partnership on it. But That's absolutely the vision of the foundation. So thanks. Good question. Yeah. Yeah. Super exciting. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So are there plans to partner with the schools too I know one of our schools is they've just kind of done this on their own about reading on the river.
Ooh, I
And
love it.
really
Can you
trying
repeat
to
the
bring
question,
some,
Yes.
activities like that into our school buildings.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to
Love it.
help facilitate some type of partnership where.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to connect. So I'm going to repeat the question. So the question was, has the trail considered partnering with Norfolk Public Schools to have, community partnership? So the answer is in my 6 months on board, I haven't, but 100% let's do it. Let's do it. So reach out to me, we'll connect. You can always reach me at hello@elizabethrivertrail.org. My email address is the longest ever. It's kendra.green@elizabethrivertrail.org. So hello@ makes it a little bit easier. Absolutely. We would love that. We have community partnerships with the Slover Library, with and Creative Reuse Center, various things, but having getting the kiddos in and even the middle school. And I know some of the Norfolk Public School high school students have volunteer requirements. There is so much volunteer need on the trail. I mean, we could literally do a cleanup every week. We could do a planting every week. So I absolutely would love to partner with Norfolk Public Schools. Let's make that happen. Yes.
One more other
Yes.
question. You said the northern terminus right now is kind of that Little Creek Road for better, or is it further?
So right now it's NSU, Norfolk State University.
I'm sorry, the northern end. So
Right. So yes, you're right. It actually terminates at Marco's Pizza. So it doesn't really have a very climactic ending. And it's like a stop and a turnaround. So there's, I think, 1 more mile stretch basically would get it down to the naval station. So at this point, that's absolutely the goal, to kind of finish down Hampton Boulevard to the naval base. It is mapped in our master map, but I think we're working on kind of the eastern extension first. Yeah. Any other questions? And I know there was one that came in via email, I think.
Oh yeah, let me.
I think that one, you can just address it. We'll get the answer to that. And
Okay.
just go ahead and probably send it out in our newsletter.
Perfect. That sounds good. It was complicated, and it is a lot, and I'm learning a lot. So don't want to take up too much time, but the biggest thing that I have found just in these 6 months is that, yes, there's the trail. We are a nonprofit organization activating, fundraising, marketing the trail, bringing people to the trail, but it's on public right of way. There's Parks and Rec, there's transit, there's general services, there's public works, there's VDOT. So there's so many different departments that play a part in what happens on the trail and how we get things happen. So while I would love just to have 11 trailheads, there's a lot to unpack with the city, but the city is a great partner, and they want to beautify the trail as much as we do. So
Well, thanks.
yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. Well, that was great. I appreciate your willingness to come out and reconnect on what's going on. So, like I said, we're going to shift over to talking about the schools now, and so. We're grateful to have our neighbor Tanya Basine here. So if you don't know Tanya at all, she's a research scientist by trade, worked previously at the CDC down in Atlanta, and after moving here was with EVMS for a while. She's a mother and she's on the school board, and she's been with the school board since 2015. So really grateful to have you here and to kind of give us an overview of what's going on division-wide with NPS. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm
So good to be with you guys in person, finally. I can't believe it's April. We're nearing the end of the school year, and I don't know, do what? I guess I should have asked where you want me to
Yeah. There we go.
stand. Okay. It's April, and obviously our kids are all in person. Yay! Like, I see a lot of parents in the room, and they have been having a really good year being back in person. And when I say they've been having a really good year, I mean, it is not without trials and things like that. It's definitely, been a trying year for a lot of families, a lot of our students and our teachers, administrators, but they are certainly doing better academically in the schools, being back in person. But of course, I know, like a lot of you, I know for me, I am probably more worried about, their emotional and mental health and just being a kid and kind of getting back to the basics so that they can learn and that they're ready to learn, because that's really what, that's what we want for our kids. So last year, with virtual learning for most of the years, our kids, the academic performance data showed that they were struggling, that they weren't really getting everything that they needed. And this year, Norfolk Public Schools, we use our Virginia SOL data and other district assessments to assess where students are performing academically. And, so that was kind of our baseline. This is where they are at the start of the school year. We reviewed that data. We see, okay, this is where they are returning back to school after a year of virtual learning. And we are seeing some positive growth across the board. And I'm talking to you guys, from a district level standpoint. And I know Dr. Doyle and Ms. Felton will talk more school specific, what's going on in their schools. But from a district level, our students, we know we have a lot of work ahead of us. And what we're finding is that, we the same subgroups that we've always had that have experienced challenges, just like we know has been happening in a lot of different areas. Those same subgroups are still experiencing inequities and challenges that have been exacerbated by the pandemic and having access to resources and opportunities. And so in those subgroups are students with disabilities, our African-American students, our economically disadvantaged students, and our English language learners primarily. So what do we do as a school board about that? So we are also knee-deep in budget discussions. We are trying to allocate resources appropriately based on that academic data. And not only that, but we're looking at our behavior data, which, for those of you who are parents, you've probably heard, well, not even just as parents, but we're hearing nationally in the news that school districts are experiencing high levels of incidents, behavior incidents, and not only that, but mental health challenges as a result, which already existed before the pandemic, but have been exacerbated as a result of just everything that our families have been through for the last 2 years. And so we know we have to put resources behind that. So we are looking at tutors for reading, specialists, and we've added more social workers. We've added school psychologists. We're also trying to build that pipeline to reinforce and provide greater supports there. And so those are some things that we are hoping to include, well, that we have included in our budget that we have given to the city for what they will work through on their end, and then we'll come back depending on what happens there. We'll come back to the board, and we will then finalize the budget by June. But right now, as far as the budget goes, those of you that know, a large percentage of our budget, the funds come from the state, and right now the state hasn't quite come to terms. The House and the Senate, they haven't agreed on a budget. What I've been hearing is, so the governor has called a special session, so they are back in Richmond, trying to hash it out. We're fingers crossed, hoping that something, happen, that we have a budget to work with, at least by May. It has to be before June 30th. So that's really late, but I've heard that I don't think we've ever been in a position where I think the latest I read today was maybe June 27th, where that has. So, and that makes it really hard for us because, as you know, there's a teacher shortage across the country, and Norfolk's not any different. We're experiencing the same shortages that are occurring in many districts across the country. So we're all, especially in our region, we are all trying to staff our schools, with the same pool of teachers, and many who, our teachers have been working very hard for the last 2 years, are burnt out, oftentimes don't feel like they have the support that they need in the classroom, and are honestly, thinking maybe there's another profession for me. And so some are just leaving the profession altogether. So those are some of the challenges that Norfolk Public Schools is having, just as other districts. Yes, Sarah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but at a district level, what is being done to address burnout and retention?
That's a great question.
Can you repeat the question?
So what's
Can
that?
you repeat the question for Zoom?
Oh, sure. So the question was asked, what is being done to attract and retain teachers and to prevent burnout? I know Dr. Doyle is probably going to talk a little bit about what he's doing in his school building, as is Ms. Felton, creating that climate of collaboration, of providing support, and showing that real caring environment is important for retaining teachers. What Norfolk Public Schools has done at a district level, we've provided bonuses for our teachers to say thank you. It's not, speaking as an individual board member, I know it's not enough. It's a thank you. I think we need to be doing a whole lot more. What I've personally advocated for is with federal funds to look at how we can correct some of the pay compression that has been, occurring over several years. How can we address that? Which is something when Mrs. Doyle was also on the school board, we looked at several years ago about where our teachers and administrators and different employee groups, where they are and how can we get them on the right step and increase their salaries. And so that is something that the school division continues to work on. But as you know, salary is not everything, but it is a big deal. But creating a positive climate is important, showing our staff and our employees that we can support them, like by providing all the other resources so that their teachers can wear the hat that is about teaching and learning, and not, they're wearing a million hats right now with, being school social worker, being mom, dad, just a lot of times being a lot of things. And especially during the pandemic, being nurse, being just about being everything. And that has been very stressful for a lot of our teachers and our employees during this time. But I think that's a great question. I think we need to get our teachers together and help us come up with a better or a strong plan for attracting and retaining teachers. In our budget this year, we've also put in for first-year teachers, we've increased starting teacher pay. That is one thing that we've done to attract new teachers. I'd like to see us consider doing more to retain some of our veteran teachers. That is something that we hope that the administration will look at doing so that we retain those that have that historical knowledge, that have that experience, to really work with our newer teachers to build that strong workforce. So, and I'd love, if you have ideas too, we are always open to individuals providing feedback on different ideas, solutions that you think, might be helpful, especially if you have been involved in our schools and teach, in the teaching field. Definitely want that feedback. So during the last 2 years, they talked about some of the challenges, but there's also been a lot of opportunity. And one of the things the division is embarking on is the development of a 5-year strategic plan. And so with that, we're looking, we hope to have a presentation to the school board on that by the end of the school year. And I think hopefully those of you who are parents or stakeholders in the schools have participated in the survey around the strategic plan, where we're hoping to get input on some of our goals and objectives and what you want to see us achieve, what you want to see our students achieve in Norfolk Public Schools. So those are some things that we are doing right now. We are also in the midst of our educational planning work, which we have been in for many, many years. And it has taken, some dips, some turns, some pauses, but some of you, especially, as it pertains to Taylor, one of the recommendations had been to close Lindenwood Elementary School. And so those children that were at Lindenwood to Taylor and some at Willard. And the school board did not vote in support of that recommendation at this time. But that's not to say that in the future, that may come back up, but with ample time for community input and involvement. So that pertaining to this. And of course, about Maury High School, which is, anybody, I think who's lived here has known that school has been kind of on the list for renovation or rebuild for several years now. And it is projected to be, there's redesign in 2023. That's kind of the timeline right now. It's on top of the list for rebuild as one of the oldest schools in the building with the poorest condition. So it will redesign in 2023 with potential rebuild in the 2025-26 school year. So that is, as it pertains to schools in this zone, those are some things in the pipeline. I am trying to see, and the other exciting thing, because I know this is a big thing that a lot of people want to know, is when can we get back into the schools to help to volunteer or to partner? And so, as you might know, because I know we've probably gotten 1,000 robocalls about it, which has been really exciting, is that you could go to our webpage and sign up to be, if you're want to volunteer, help out. There's a page with the process for a process for signing up to volunteer to do background checks. If your business or workplace, wants to partner with our schools, there's an opportunity to do that as well. So I really encourage you guys to do that. Oh, thank you. To do that when you get a chance. But I really would love to hear, if you guys have any questions, open to taking some questions from you all. So
just to clarify, so are volunteers now being allowed to schools?
they are.
Okay.
They are, but you have to do the background. You have to first go through the process of doing the background check and
And then once it's done, volunteers are allowed.
right. Yep. That's right. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
So I've talked to a lot of teachers just in the community and hearing a lot of feedback around issues of behavior. And we're talking a lot about kids' mental and emotional health. And it seems like a lot of the kids love a lot of the day treatment counselors and people who are actively giving them a lot of emotional and behavioral support in the school system. But a lot of people get the feedback that there's not enough of those folks and that there's a lot of barriers to getting those kids into those programs. So I would love to see something around, or maybe you can talk a little bit about there's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy approaches in schools, and what's stopping us from having in physical education, it teaches them how to have healthy bodies. Like, what's stopping us from doing sort of like a mental health education where it's just like teaching them to have resilient minds?
Well, that is a great question, and that is.
Summarize the basics of the question, so yeah.
Yes, so do you want to come up here and repeat that? No. So yes. So the question is about implementing greater mental health and behavioral support for our students. And that's a great question, and it's something near and dear to me. And like I said, when I started off, you know, how our students are doing is really important. And having those strategies and supports in place is critically important. And Norfolk Public Schools was,
As well. Patrick is raising his hand.
oh, okay. Do you want to step in before?
I just wanted to
You're
say,
mute.
Unmute.
I am unmuted. You can't hear me though? Uh-oh.
You gotta scream at him, just scream, unmute yourself.
But it looks
Oh,
like
oh,
he
it's me.
was. Looked like he was
There we
unmuted.
go. Try
Can you
again.
hear? Is it? It may be my computer. Can you hear me?
It was me. You're good.
Okay, so you can hear me now. Better. All right. Well, I just want to talk because with the TDT counseling, you know, they're usually folks. We don't control the staffing of them. They're usually outsourced. So like I have Intercept in my building. Some folk, you know, some buildings have those you know, different things. But the school division has supported us in those by providing us with C's counselors, which don't. It's I'm not going to remember what you may remember, Ms. Basine, what all those letters mean, but they are aimed at kids in those tier 3, those kids with the highest need. We also have behavior specialists in our buildings to again help out. So kids, because kids typically have to have Medicaid to qualify for the TDT counseling. So in order to kind of address what that question was saying, to kind of make, you know, to provide the resources, that's what we have our behavior specialists for, and that's what we have our C's counselors for. So I have 2 of those individuals in my building too, plus I have 3 TDT counselors. So I think it's just, you know, I just want to touch down on that from the building level, Ms. Basine, because, you know, but that's kind of what I added into that question. Hopefully that answers it a little bit better for whoever asked that.
Yes. And to piggyback on what Dr. Doyle just said, you know, that's one of the things in the budget for the last couple of years. We have added behavioral specialists into our budget. And as he said, the C's, you know, which is, I think that it's like early intervention services. So we have added greater supports in that arena, especially to work with our students with disabilities. And so we have slowly been adding those supports. Are they enough? You know, I think Dr. Doyle, like, right? I mean, we could always use more, right? Yes. So, and right now we really have to look at what are the needs of our students. And I think all of that has been magnified. I mean, our the needs are great. They were great before and they're even greater now. And so we're catching up with trying to provide the necessary resources so that we can support students, you know, with their social and emotional learning and with their mental health needs. So I think that's a great question, and that's something, you know. What's that?
How the budget shakes out.
How the budget shakes out. Yes, not only that, but at the state level. Right, funding, yeah, and exactly. And at the funding from the state level to the local level, I think that's, it's gonna be really important. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, thanks. It's a really interesting take on mental health in schools. And I wanted to piggyback on that question just to amplify like a specific segment of it that I thought was critical. And I don't know if it was addressed, but the idea of, so the counselors in schools, their resources and often they're doing a lot of interventions. And the way that I heard that question was a suggestion for curriculum-based mental health support. Particularly the comparison to physical health. I think it's a really interesting concept, and we're starting to see some pilots on the West Coast and in New York on that with, I mean, it's preliminary stuff, but I would get behind funding for that kind of stuff in schools. Not sure how, but if there was a program like that, even if it was outsourced to like a nonprofit or something, that's something I would throw some support behind. I wanted to know if that was on the table at all.
Yes. Well, and I appreciate you bringing that part of the question back up. So a couple of years ago, the General Assembly did pass a bill to include mental health as part of their health education. So that is being incorporated into their health education already. And again, could it be, hopefully, that is not on the table to be removed, but as of right now, that is part of their health education in our schools.
Really happy to hear that. Good
Yeah.
luck.
And the other thing I want to mention that's different, so Norfolk Public Schools, in 2017, we passed a suicide intervention and prevention policy. And with that policy, we have committed to providing suicide and mental health education and training for our teachers, basically everyone from the bus drivers on up, because everyone who has contact with the student. And so that is in progress. Of course, interruptions have occurred due to the pandemic, but that is something that, I know we will be looking at getting back on track and making sure that we have the educational programming that is identified in that policy, as well as the supports to help execute it. So, so those are really great questions. And like I said, without, I think health is at the core of teaching and learning, not just for our students, but for our staff. And that's something that I think Norfolk Public Schools has been committed to and will continue to be. So.
I think we'll kind of transition a little bit, but we're not going to close out. And I want to encourage further questions along those lines, but I also wanted to kind of widen the discussion a little bit. And so at this point, I'd like to invite Dr. Doyle into the conversation, as well as Sarah Wesley, who's the president of the PTA for Blair Middle School. So the reason why I was super glad that Tanya suggested that we invite the principals was because we hear a lot about the division-wide performance and division-wide issues on school board meetings. And then I feel like parents have opportunities to converse about their student and the interactions in that classroom with the parents. But what I think is missing in the conversation is how is Blair Middle School doing? What does Blair Middle School need from our community? And similarly for Taylor. And so that was kind of the genesis of this conversation. So I pass it over to you, Dr. Doyle, to kind of share a little bit about how you're doing and how we can help you.
Gotcha. So I have one request. So I do have a little PowerPoint. Are you able to turn around the camera so I can actually see the people I'm talking to, or is that too much? Is that too much to do? I'm good either way. I mean, I'm used to talking to just the screen anyways over the last year and a half, so I'm good anyways. But I just want to say hello. I am Dr. Doyle, principal at Blair Middle School, and I don't have much as far as trying to share, but I just wanted to kind of pull some stuff up because some of the questions that you did ask, and you should see this, correct? You see everyone see that? Can I get a thumbs up or yes?
Yes.
Awesome. So again, and I know, Scott, we had talked, about what you were looking for and about what's, how to move forward with some of our stuff. And so I just wanted to kind of give you some stuff about what we've done. But I don't like to ever do objectives. I think that's too educational, but I think it's those thoughts to ponder. And after that conversation we had is, I just put on here, how can we be more intentional about engaging all of our students? I think that and families, that's one of the purposes I want to be here today. And are we willing to change what we think and do to promote better family engagement for all of our kids? Because Blair, we are not a community school, which makes it difficult. We stretch all the way from the base over to Huntersville and all the way, to Berkeley. So it does make it very difficult. And then all of you there, what is your role in promoting the engagement? And what policies exist in our schools that send mixed signals? And then how can we continue these two-way conversations? Because I love these dialogues. And then how do we tell our story to our community? So those are just things that I always, I think that as we go through this and continue this conversation, because today won't be the only day, but this is some of the stuff I'd like to look at. And as we heard, earlier, we did get off to a rough start, and this is just our teacher absences. And you can see on that, not only the absences, but the fill rates. And, so when you have 119 absences, it's very difficult for any type of consistency. And it was due to COVID. We had teachers out. We had, whether it was, direct contact, exposure, whatever. So you can see in those numbers, that's it. And then you don't have the substitutes in the buildings to cover those classes. But, again, our school board, Dr. Birdsong, has been terrific at providing our teachers with, incentives and stuff to cover classes, just to ensure that we aren't burning out our teachers, because it does fall on them. But we're covering classes as administrators. We had to be very resourceful, and we did, but you can see that we're slowly climbing back to some normal life here, to where we're not. And I do think we've hit a good stride over the last couple months. And again, we talked about this earlier, the needs that were addressed. The TDT, which is the, counseling services, we've seen a huge increase in referrals for those. The C's referrals, which again is that early intervention for our kids. We've seen an increase in student self-harm assessment. We've also had, and this was through March 1st, I was looking at quarantine days, 2,454 days that our kids missed for quarantine. And then we had the increase in disruptive behaviors and an increase in fights. But to me, I always, I don't look at those things as, so we know those things, we look at those things, but what are we going to do as a school? So some of the stuff we already mentioned, and what we did in October is, once we've seen some of this stuff, we held a faculty meeting, and we pretty much, we said, we're not worried about the academics right now. Let's focus on the social emotional learning. Teachers needed to hear that from me, even though they knew it, because we had to reteach some of the behaviors. A lot of the kids, they missed 5th grade. They missed some of their 4th grade. So just simple things about just lining up and just some of those things the kids missed. And you can kind of see some of the stuff on here, and I can share the PowerPoint. I don't want to go through all of it, but you can see on there that we focused on behaviors. One of our things was teaching with empathy, not judgment. When kids come to us, let's just listen instead of trying to fix everything, because that's what teachers want to do, but just listen so that these kids know that they care. Our positive behavior intervention system, we realigned that with student and parent input. Clubs, we try to do some other stuff, and you can see on that bottom right, I know we were talking about social emotional learning. We have embedded social emotional learning in every single class every day, not just health. So our behavior specialist created basically a library for our teachers. There's almost 400 different lessons in these slides. And sometimes it's just quick. Some may just be a picture of Michael Jordan up, and just some quick writes to get our kids on, to get them engaged, get them in classrooms. But then there are some other stuff that is a little bit more in depth, but our behavior specialists work. So we've actually embedded that. Every class, every day starts with some type of social emotional warm up to get our kids, and then we go into the academic piece. Our student leadership series, again, we identified some kids. Who are those kids that are struggling? And then we set them up monthly meeting where they meet with myself. We brought in Mr. Taylor, who does some consultation work. We brought him in, and he has been tremendous as well to work with our kids. And then our family engagement, some of the stuff that we are doing at Blair every single week. You can see our SMORE newsletter. I communicate with our kids, which is really cool. They actually email me, which is really nice, through Canvas, which is another system that we have in place, and our kids are aware of it. We have a huge presence on social media. So if you want to see what Blair's doing, I control the page. So if you actually want to see how I think as well, you can go to our Facebook page. You can go to Instagram. Miss Cave, our assistant principal, does Instagram. I'm a little too old. She gets the Instagram more than I do, but also on Twitter. So you can see the stuff that we're doing, see the stuff that we're highlighting. We have a mentoring program with ODU football, as well as basketball. They even invited us to a basketball game. We met the coach. We went to the locker room. And these are all the things that our kids, they truly need. Anchored for Life, our military family. We started up that program, which is a national program, comes with a lot of resources. And it's really been helpful to have all these different things in place for our kids. So, you want to look at some of our discipline data. This is where we at, so we hear about these things. And I think a lot of the issues that we have, and the reason why we have is because we actually have we've had an increase in fights. But overall, we've actually had a decline. And now this omits, what you're seeing right now, it goes through, so I think it was March 1st. So I'm only comparing March 1st to March 1st each year. So this isn't like one full year compared to where we're at now. So you're actually seeing we only have 849 referrals this year because again, our teachers they're tolerating probably a little bit more because they understand the kids, but we're also have those additional resources for our kids. So instead of writing a referral, it's, hey, why don't we go see this counselor? Why don't we go talk to a dean? Let's go for a walk outside. We've put some things in place. We have like, I don't want to call it a sensory room, but it's got the smells, we got the shades over the light to make it, we have the seating and some of those things, again, that we've been able to support our kids. So we're not always going for those referrals because if the kids aren't in school, we can't teach them. You see our out of school suspensions again. It's still a little high for me. I don't like that number. We still have, so you look at a number of, and that's a number of days. So it's a little high, but when you have an increase in fights, those are usually your discipline dates. They're discipline points that lead to higher suspension. So, I'm not surprised to see that, but again, we actually have seen a decline through the years. Our in-school suspension, now, we didn't always have in-school suspension. So when you see 2017 data, it was actually a half-time. So, there wasn't actually a full-time ISS coordinator at Blair. But again, we use our in-school suspension as a way to keep our kids in school, especially with that virtual platform. Kids can go into ISS. Sometimes they go there because they just need a mental break to get away from the noise. They sit on their Chromebooks and they get work done and they kind of reset themselves and go back because a lot of our kids sometimes just need that break. One of the things I just spoke about at our school board meeting and I was very proud of is our chronic absenteeism. Like I said, so when I took over Blair 3 years ago, it was over 21%. We got it to around 7% during COVID. We knew it was going to go back up, but the state standard is anything below 15% is considered is where they want. That's our green zone, what they consider. So we are under that threshold, which I'm very, very proud of. Chronic absenteeism, I can't really go into explain all of that. We'll be in here for days, but basically this graph is showing our kids are coming to school. They're showing up because again, and a lot of that's our teachers and that culture that we've created at Blair. And then some of this real quick, and I'm not going to share specific STAR data because my concern is, and sometimes when people see the purpose of STAR really is just for teachers to learn about growth. It's a universal screening progress. And you can kind of see the tier 1, 2, and 3. We always tier our kids. That's pretty much our daily lives. Even when my wife and I, when we had our first kid, we were tiering people, our family members. Which one are we calling first? Then which one's, so tiering is just something that educators, we're just ingrained in our daily lives to do. But I just want to give you some insight, so I looked at this at our kids that took the STAR test in February, in the fall and in the winter. Because with COVID, again, a lot of our kids, we have about 1,100 kids, but not every kid was able to take both due to quarantine and everything else. So of that, of those 700 kids, 101 kids declined. We had 438 remain the same and 161 showed growth. So that basically means that, the kids, they either moved from one tier to another if they declined. So 101, so you're seeing that we actually had a lot more of our kids show growth from the first one. A lot of our kids remain the same. And that is something that we've been looking at as well as how do we keep pushing these kids forward? But let's go a little bit deeper with that, right? Those kids that remain the same, 95 are already on tier 1. So those kids can't go anywhere else. They're there. So really that's 300 kids out of 1,200. So I'm quite proud of the growth of our kids and the work of our teachers. So that's the math side of things. So when we get the data, what do we do with it? And this is, this is why sometimes it's difficult to share specific numbers because I know sometimes you might see 40% in that proficiency and it's like, wow, I can't. But to me, I'm like, well, that's great because that means 40% of our kids are already ready for that SOL. But that continued growth is what we're looking for. And this is just, so we use our data and we look at, the SOLs, that 8.3, those are our SOLs. So it shows, again, what are our strengths as a school, where are our opportunities? And this is just, and this is how our teachers use that data from STAR to make sure that our kids are showing growth. And then again, we did the same, sorry, I repeat that slide. But same thing with our STAR data for English, right? We had 113 decline. 588 remain the same. And again, reading has been the crux at Blair. We got to do a little bit, we got to get our kids over that hump. And you can see, but we did have more kids show growth than decline. So again, something to celebrate. While be it small, it is something to celebrate. But again, let's go a little bit further. 187 of those 580 kids are already at tier 1. So they can't go anywhere, like I said. And 193 stayed at tier 3 and 208 stayed at tier 2. So we got to get those tier 2 kids to tier 1, and we got to get those tier 3 kids to tier 2. And the state does recognize growth. So if we get those kids to grow, they do count as passes because the state doesn't expect a kid to go from a 3rd grade reading level to a 7th grade reading level in 1 year. So I'm very, so I like seeing those things again. And then we also have some stuff, some other supports from the division, such as Lexia, that can break stuff down. Our focus has been comprehension as a school. So I kind of pulled out the comprehension data, and you can see, our 6th graders, they've been struggling a little bit more. You can, if you look at this far column, where it's only 2% have moved. Now we've only been doing this program with Fidelity for about a month. So this is, so we're not going to see as much movement, but our 6th grade, again, they've been struggling. That's been traditionally how it is. 6th and 9th grade, our kids struggle. But you look at that 7th grade team, they're getting that they've got 13% of the kids showing growth and 5% with our 8th graders. And then just again, some of the samples. And then just some of the stuff that I'm very proud of that I want to share is our VDOE climate survey that came out. Because again, I stress relationships. I stress whether it's me to the families, communities, teachers, kids, whatever it is. And I'm very proud of, some of the data that came out because previous, to me getting there, it was the opposite. So, 90% of our kids strongly agree that adults care about them. That's terrific. And I'm so proud to see that. And we had about 700 kids participate in this survey. So it's not as if it was a small sample. Adults treat me with respect. So our kids feel that the adults respect them. And then 90% of our kids at the school also feel they listen to what they say, because I think that's such a big piece of it. So often our kids just want to be heard. And then some other recent things, recognitions is Trex Recycling. We just, out of 787 schools across the United States, we were 13. So it was all about collecting recycling. We got a shout out for our climate and culture work. We also won an ATE award between Blair and Old Dominion, and they basically, it's Virginia Public Schools, and they look at schools and universities, and they basically were looking at our partnership with Old Dominion, and they're like, wow, this is one of the best. So they gave us that award last year, and we were very proud of that. That military counseling piece I talked about earlier, the Anchored for Life, we got some recognition from them for the innovation work that we're having. And we also just recently placed second in the regional Lego competition. So again, we're all here together, right? So attendance improved, grades improved, tests improved. Like, this is why we're here today, because we need to see all of this stuff happens. And we know this happens when we have the community involvement. And, Scott and I, we just in the brief conversation, we were already talking about how can we bring other civic leagues together to Blair? How can we incorporate, because we're not set in a community, how can we get those other folks involved, those other advocates, the other civic leagues? And I know you talked about the volunteers. So if anyone wants to volunteer, you can pick up your phone right now and you can scan that, because I do want to make sure that we get all the volunteers we could in our building, because again, that helps our teachers. You talked about burnout earlier. What can you do? There are people that can come in and relieve teachers from duties, to be in the hallways when our kids are transitioning, come into the cafeteria. Those are resources that are really will help the teacher morale, will help, prevent any type of burnout, and making sure that we retain our teachers. So with that, you have my email. I do try to make myself visible, not only to my staff, but to the community. I'm always available, whether email, whether Twitter. I'm awful with the phone, so please don't try calling the school looking for me. And I try to train my parents, same thing, but I do respond to email if there's anything that's ever needed. So I'll close in just saying, let's see how you can get involved and help us out, because we're going to go as far as the supports that we get. And we know our teachers can't do it alone. We've learned that through COVID. We need the support. When volunteers went away. It did have a, it did impact us. So we want to make sure that we get those volunteers back. We had them in our school yesterday. And they just pushed around the snack cart for kids get Blair bucks. So they collected 500 Blair bucks from kids because, when we recognize our kids doing the right thing, we hand them some Blair, some basically fake money, and then they get to buy snacks or supplies or, toys or what, or now I'll say toys from middle school, but it's something that we really, we need those helps. We need the supports. So with that, I'm done with the presentation piece. Hopefully that answered some of your questions that you had. If not, let me know what questions you have.
Dr. Doyle, that was fantastic. I really appreciate the brief. You exceeded any expectation I had for what you were going to talk about. Before we take it to questions, though, I did want to pass it over to Sarah, because obviously another way that you can get engaged with the school is to get involved with the PTA. So Sarah, did you have any updates that you wanted to share about the PTA, or I mentioned a short mention of Maury, I think you were talking about?
Yes, so PTA, as you may have guessed, with no volunteers being able to be in the school, has been on life support for the last couple of years. We did earmark money this year to bring the Watchdogs Program. It's Dads of Great Students. It was a program that we brought to Taylor when I was the PTA president at Taylor, and we're in turn now bringing that to Blair. And it's just simply a program to increase visibility of men, of father figures, of community members in the building. And if you volunteer to be a watchdog, you come in, you're given a t-shirt, you get a schedule of classes to go to. If you have a kid in the school, then make sure you can have lunch with them. But also to give you a really good perspective of what goes on during the day in school. And I can't cite exactly where it was, but one school system did something similar, and the number of fights dramatically decreased just by that presence of people in the building. It made a difference. So that will most likely, considering where we are in the school year, that'll be launched in the fall.
The watchdogs you're saying is not ready yet, but
Well,
You can still come to our building.
yeah, it'll be, we probably, now that we actually know we can have volunteers back in the building, like if you're interested in being a watchdog, get your volunteer sign up done right away. And I'd love to get a couple in there towards the end of the year. But what happens is we get into SOL time and they don't really want people in the buildings during SOL. And then all of a sudden it's June and you're like, that's not necessarily the best time to experience a school day when the kids have gotten feral and the teachers are just holding it all together. So that will definitely be rolling out fully in the fall. We need people to join the PTA. We need people to come to meetings. We used to have the Clipper Classic, used to be a big fundraiser, but that was unfortunately kind of the last time it was run, they lost more money than they earned, even though they had some big sponsors.
that was a 1 mile run. Was it 5K?
It was a 5K. And there were some issues. They used to do it before SOL testing, and so people wanted to get out of class, but because there was a fight one of the last years that it happened, and this is prior to Dr. Doyle's time, that they ended up saying you have to do it after SOLs, and the kids are like, they didn't want to go run in June when all they had to do is sit in the classroom and like watch movies in the air conditioning. We used to do something called the Blair Blast, which was like a Halloween related activity, but that's like a dance, and dances have been off the table. So we are really looking for the community to get involved. Really for the end of the year, just getting watchdogs situated, and we're doing lunch for the teachers during Teacher Appreciation Week. But again, we're doing this on no funds because we have had no funding come in. So we do donation-based dues. So I try to kind of twist the arm of the people I know, not to get 5, but to get 20. So we have a little bit of a slush fund from that. But that's really all about that. Because I sit on the boosters board, Maury, when you get to, if you don't know this, at Maury, there's really a group that does fundraising and provides like a lot of things that the PTAs provide at the elementary and secondary level. So Morey has its own PTSA, which does a little bit of fundraising, but they have a $500 scholarship, and they have, if a family is displaced with a fire or a student is homelessness, they work that way. Boosters raises money. Boosters used to do a big auction every year. Well, again, off the table during COVID. So last year we did just a week of giving, and it went surprisingly well. So our week of giving starts again this Monday, and it'll run through the 30th. And you know, if you want to find out, it's moreyboosters.org. If you have kids at Morey, Nick, maybe you go and give a little bit. Sure,
The first time I heard about it, so all right. Yeah.
And
So,
Sarah-
but it's good to know that we so we've got to get the word out to people, and we did just.
And we'll certainly try to take part in getting the word out around West Kent as best we can.
So I'll send you.
Yeah.
I'll send you an email about that. But that's really nice.
Sarah, I just want to say too, one, thank you for your hard work. She's been incredible for the years I have, and hopefully she can adopt some kids, because in 2 years I won't have it. 2 years, right? But
Yeah, no, 2 years.
the significance of the PTA to us, right? So there are schools like in Chesapeake, middle schools that have a budget of $47,000. So when you were asking questions earlier about retention, and you're asking about some of those things, the PTA has a lot more flexibility when it comes to funding. You know, they just bought us a Keurig, one of the nice ones. And I can't tell you, one Keurig has impacted our custodial staff and everyone, because they have coffee. But we're limited. We don't have a $47,000 budget. You know, we don't have, but that's where the PTA can be so incredibly helpful, because you go to schools in Chesapeake, you know, where not only can, you know, potentially they make more money, but then they also have these PTAs that can give their teachers more incentives and more gifts. You know, we have next week, I think next week or 2 weeks, we have Teacher Appreciation Week coming up. And, you know, we can't do as much for our teachers, but again, our teachers don't ask for this stuff. They don't work at Blair for the money. They work at Blair for our kids. And I know that for a fact, but it would be nice if we can say, hey, and I know Sarah would agree, if we can do a lot more for them. And that's where the PTA really is important, because they can supplement those gaps in money that, you know, Ms. Basine can't spend money on, I can't spend money on, because we are state and federally funded and locally funded. We do have to, our hands are tied when it comes to buying some stuff. The PTA has more flexibility.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to the both of you. I wanted to give Miss Charlene Felleton, and Melanie Sewell is here as the PTA president from Taylor Elementary School, and wanted to allow you to share what your thoughts are. I appreciate you joining us. We're having trouble.
You're on
hearing
mute.
you. 1 second.
Mhm. Can you check your mute for us?
Uh-oh.
You need to turn this on.
Can somebody else try to pipe in here and let us know if you can hear, or so we can check and see if we hear you?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, Ms. Felton, we can't hear you on the Zoom either. Well, maybe I'll give you a chance to talk until we can work out a couple of things here, and we'll see what we can work out.
Okay, so I'm kind of going to piggyback a little bit on what Sarah said. Taylor PTA is fantastic, and but you know, like Sarah said, we have been on nothing for 3 years now. We usually do our big taste of 757 that Sarah helped start, and you know, we have raised $20,000 before, and we're now on our 3rd year of not being able to hold it. So we've not been able to do a lot of fundraising. So we're kind, you know, and in a way it's worked out because we haven't really been able to do a lot. So we haven't had to spend a lot of money. But you know, as we start to ramp back up to normality, we have been able to, we're gonna have a dance in 2 weeks, our first dance in 2 years. And tomorrow is Earth Day. So actually Summer is helping. We're gonna do the cleanup of Taylor's front yard and all the gardens and paint benches. And so if anybody in the neighborhood wants to come by, bring your rake and come on back. You know, at Taylor, we, like Sarah said, we do the Watchdogs. And then we do a reading program where parents, people in the neighborhood, whoever is approved, comes in and you get a kid that you read with, you know, once a week, twice a week, come in and help them with reading. This year we implemented the Ron Clark Academy, which has been fantastic. It is basically, for my fellow Harry Potter nerds, it's basically a house system. And so each kid is put into a different house. There are 4 houses. Each kid is put into a house and they work together to earn points for the end of the school year. We've had house rallies. Again, with COVID, we haven't been able to do quite as many things as we want to, but you know, at Christmas, we did a house hot cocoa party and they learned all their house cheers. And then for Valentine's Day, they sent cards to, all the kids sent cards to people in nursing homes for Valentine's, and they did it through their houses. So that's been a really exciting thing for the kids. And even like, you know, my kids know the kids in different grades that are in their house and they say hello, and now they all have new house t-shirts because we raised enough money for our fun run that they have, every kid has their own house t-shirt so they can tell who's in the houses. So that's been really, really fun. So, you know, we can always use volunteers. We can always use, again, teacher appreciation's coming up. And yes, we have money in our budget for teacher appreciation, but we still need money for teacher appreciation because we do like to spoil our teachers. And it's not even spoil. I wish I could give them all a cruise or something, but like, you know, a salad and a bagel really doesn't do much, but it does something. So, but no, you know, any time you can help, anytime you can come into the school, the kids love seeing, you know, people from the neighborhood, and it's a really great place. And I think we're really lucky to live in a neighborhood with such a great school and great staff. And
I'd love to see you at Blair too. So don't feel that you just have to give all your love to the elementary school. Because the middle schools are like, you give all your love and time to the elementary and you give all your money to the high school, and the middle schools are like that middle child that is really kind of forgotten about.
way to put it.
So they get into a lot of trouble.
So back to the favorite youngest child here, Ms. Felton, can we hear you now?
Yes, I think you can hear me now, correct?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for inviting us. And thank you, Ms. Sewell, for covering for me while I figured out that my ear pods were still connected to my mic. So thank you for welcoming us today. And thank you, Dr. Doyle. You did an amazing job presenting Blair, but I don't have a PowerPoint. However, I just have some points that I'd like to share with you all. We've had a great recovery year. It has been wonderful to see all of our children back into our classrooms and smiling in our hallways and engaging with our teachers. Yes, like Dr. Doyle was explaining, absences were a struggle, especially after the Christmas holiday or the winter break. But we have recovered nicely and things are going quite smoothly. Our population at WH Taylor has recovered and exceeded the pre-pandemic numbers. So we are climbing back up above 325 students, and we hope to climb even higher next year. One of the biggest impacts that we have seen at WH Taylor for the early learning students is the children that we have in kindergarten this year are truly experiencing school for the very first time. And so if you can remember back in the day when we didn't have universal pre-K experiences, and the children that had to start in kindergarten and learn how to, engage with each other, share, play, take turns. And so that's kind of where we've had to go this year with a lot of our early childhood students, a lot of our kindergarten, our pre-K, our first grade students, and even second grade, because again, their kindergarten experience had gotten cut short. So we've done a lot of work at allowing the children to play a little more, learning how to engage with each other a little more appropriately. And I think that's where Ms. Sewell was referring to our house system, so that we can match children from all different grade levels. I'm in the house of givers. My house is Altruismo, and everybody on the staff has a different house that they have picked. And the children come together, and when I see my house students in the hall, they show me their sign, and we celebrate that we share traits together. When we talk about behaviors at WH Taylor, we talk about always being safe, respectful, responsible, and kind. And I cannot emphasize that kind and responsibleness enough, because again, coming back from the pandemic, it's about sharing, taking turns, respecting each other, and learning how to engage appropriately, so that everybody feels heard and everybody is celebrated. So we really have focused a lot on that. I do have a focus for the upcoming school year. It's exciting to announce that we will have a full-time reading specialist. We have hired a full-time reading specialist. We will have a full-time math specialist. I have a PALS tutor that is with two PALS tutors that work with our children every day. And those are amazing positions that have finally been fully funded for full-time at WH Taylor, which is wonderful. As far as recruiting teachers and retaining teachers, we are all recruiting and retaining. In fact, we just offered 2 contracts to teachers, one in Oklahoma and one in Missouri, 2 amazing candidates that want to join our community. So I'm excited about the year as we continue to grow. You can follow us on social media as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do have Watchdogs that we hope to bring back next year. So again, we need our dads within our school. And another thing we're looking at next year is, things will change. We will have 2 recesses in elementary and early elementary so that the children get more outside time to play. And that's why we are looking to expand upon our playground spaces and making sure we have enough outdoor space for our children to engage in. So we will work with that. And we're also engaging in some training this summer on responsive classroom practices. So we really want to make sure that as our teachers return and take some time this summer for themselves, they are going to come back and take some time to learn a little bit more on how to help our children recover socially and emotionally as we get started for the new school year. So that is exciting. And I do need my parents to sign up for pre-K. We have a pre-K, and I am almost positive I'm going to get a second pre-K classroom this year. So I am really hoping that this pre-K classroom is going to be a little bit different so that other children within the community can apply to attend. So I'm encouraging all of my families, all of the community, to submit that preschool application. We are submitting applications now so that I can fill 2 preschool classrooms for our community. I think that's about it. As far as just some exciting news to share, if anybody has any questions in specifics.
Can I touch on the playground situation? I didn't get to that yet. Okay, I don't know if I'm sure you know that there's the giant playground on the corner of Claremont and Spotswood. That is not Taylor's playground. That is the city playground. There's the tot lot, which is over in the big, field. The tot lot is 23 years old, so I hear, and we need a new tot lot and a new playground. So this year we've done the fun run at Taylor for I don't even know how many years. But this year we did it a little different. We did it in the fall, and we worked with a company that helped us raise money, and we raised about $17,000 to put in an account, to start an account for a playground. But if you know anything about playgrounds, they are way more than $17,000. So we are wanting to work with the Civic League, with the neighborhood, because I just really feel like if you have ever lived in this neighborhood and had a child, your child has played on that playground. I don't care what school they've gone to, they have played on that playground. If you have a grandchild, they have played on that playground. And so I really feel like it's something that this neighborhood would really respond to. I want to go to the businesses in Chelsea. We can have a slide sponsored by the Bakehouse, or, but I just feel like if we can find a way to get letters, to get info with QR codes to all of the neighborhood, I really feel like people would give happily to our neighborhood school. So that is the goal. That is my goal. I've got 4 more years at Taylor, and that is my goal in these next 4 years, is to get a bigger, better playground for these little kids, because that little playground, there's supposed to be 5th graders playing on that. It's tiny and it's broken half the time. And so that is, so spread the word. We need a new playground.
Now, I'm gonna ask you, when that playground gets installed, will we be able to have the city playground back for our little kids?
I don't know about that.
Because right now we can't play on it, and I'm trying to get to the core of the issue of if it's a safety issue and
Well, and
that's
that's
not
part of
going away.
And that's part of the
or
issue
if
too,
it's-
I think, is that playground, like those pre-Kers, like I don't even want my 4-year-old on that playground.
The
It's
tall one.
the tall
is
playground. It's tall. And so I don't even know, Ms. Felton, if the little ones are allowed to go over there. I know some of them are sometimes. But so I don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
But I'll tell you when I do. Thank you.
I know that there are a lot of questions about how playground space on the school grounds is allocated. And I did do a lot of research with the Department of Parks and Rec. And I do not want the playground and the use of the playground to be a dividing line between W.H. Taylor and our community and our families, because again, your children that play out there as toddlers, I hope will be students in our halls in just a few short years. The way it stands now, as I've done a lot of research, is that playground, as is any playground that sits on school property, within those, the zone of W.H. Taylor, is allocated to the use of the children at the school during school hours. Which is, in the past, it may not have been used by the school children prior to I'm not sure why, tenure at Taylor. However, after I arrived, we had done a lot of research on it, and we wanted to make sure that our older children and all of our children had playground space to enjoy their recess time. And so as it stands now, the signs have been changed so that it communicates it a little more clearly. Unfortunately, I think a lot of that has to do with safety and security. We want to make sure that everybody on our school grounds is, vetted or signed in, or we know who they are at all times. And if somebody is in the school grounds, to include the playground spaces, that I do have the discretion to call for support if they aren't supposed to be on our property. The other is, just a liability. I know that when we had reopened a little bit, we did have some of our neighborhood children coming in because, again, when the closure had happened, a lot of the children had developed new routines, new schedules where they were coming out around lunch times to play on the playgrounds, to swing. I get it. I completely get it. I'm a mom with children too. But our big kids, they can be rough, and there are a lot of them. And, little ones are falling and accidentally being bumped. And I'd have parents in the office wondering how I was going to discipline a 5th grade child who bumped the toddler. And so, again, it's not meant to be a dividing line between the school and our community. But the way it stands now is all of the playground spaces are identified for school use during school hours.
And I think the way to eliminate the potential for there being a dividing line is to get everyone together and increase the amount of facilities that we have in Westgate. I know there's a lot of people that are talking about making the Redgate Park more accessible, more usable, friendlier for use, like a shade structure over it to make it not like a inferno during the day. And then that would eliminate a lot of these problems, because we also agree we don't want any barriers. Yeah, and the ERT and the Elizabeth River Foundation adding the park up at Jeff Robertson has helped. So I think we all have the same interests here.
So the Westover Park, the Girl Scouts did clean that up, I think a year or two ago, and they went to the city to try to get more equipment at that park. They were so nice for you to come and present to us, and we'll see you later. But they really were trying to revitalize that park.
Yeah.
And I did meet and discuss with Park and Recs the needs of the community and our younger children that want to play and their availability of spaces. And I still advocate for that. I still am asking how we can add more playground structures, more things out within the community so that our families have places to bring their children. Because as a parent, as an educator, our children need to be outside more. They need to be engaging in nature with each other and everything more, and away from our screens. And so I think that we are all on the same page, and I will support and go and help you advocate for additional playground spaces in the community without hesitation. I just want everybody to understand that I do not wish to make that a dividing point, and I do want to collaborate with you so that we can bring more outside play opportunity to our community.
Anybody else with questions?
I just wanted to add about the shape structure for the Berkeley Park. I've done research on it and I've been in contact with the city, and they're open to basically if we present them with, there's grants that we can get for the shape structure. And if we present it to them, they're happy to like help us move forward with all that. But I just need help. I need help researching the grants, figuring out how to get everything put together. You can't do it by myself.
Are those the block by block grants?
No, they're like, some of them are through the American Academy of Dermatology. There's federal grants. So I just need help finding them. And I've only got myself, and so I need help. If anyone wants to help me research it, the city is more than happy to work with us and get that done. But I just need some help.
I do have one question, and it probably is more geared toward Tanya. Do you know about school start times next year? Have they talked about that? You can say yes or no, and that's all I need. I just didn't know if it, because they changed this year, and I know the bus is a situation.
Right.
So
They changed, so the start time changes that occurred this year, and when we had the hybrid return last year was largely because of our transportation issues, and for cleaning, disinfecting, all of that, giving time for those things to occur. So it wasn't really the same start time changes that were being proposed before pre-pandemic.
when that was our biggest concern.
Yeah, when that was your biggest, right. And so that discussion, if we're talking about that discussion, that is on hold right now. But, whether staggers will change next year, because honestly, not Taylor necessarily, although it sounds like you may have a question about that, but some of our elementary schools start nearly at 10 o'clock in the morning and get out at 4:30 or 4:20, and I hear a lot from those elementary schools because we all know with young kids, like that's half their morning is already complete by that time, and they fall apart at 1 o'clock. And a lot of our schools see behaviors and things like that at 1 p.m. And anyway, so they've been advocating really hard to have that stagger changed so that at least not the same schools aren't in that late stagger. But the board has not been apprised of any changes to the start times that have been in place this year.
Okay.
So I don't know, Ms. Felton might know of discussions happening with school principals. I don't know, not to put you on the spot, but I don't know. Nothing has come to the school board about it. But you mentioned transportation. So transportation is a really, really huge deal. If there are ideas for how we can solve this issue, I think it's going to continue next year, unfortunately. I mean, we had this issue before the pandemic, and I think that it is, we can expect it to continue. And so I think we need to really think outside the box, and I think that might be some way, I don't know if the Civic League, just come up with some creative problem solving to help support our students, because it's been a rough ride, literally, not to
Unintended.
unintended, yeah, to get our students to school on time. I mean, I've seen middle school students at a bus stop after 8:15 when they start, and so that's a problem.
Any other questions, either out in Zoom world or in here? Well, again, I can't say thank you enough for everyone from the schools for joining us. Thank you so much.
Hey, Scott.
I'm just gonna sit here. Somebody else had something?
Well, you had emailed me one question earlier. I didn't know if you wanted me to address that. And I don't know if that was someone that was in your audience, but you had emailed me a question
I think it was anonymous, so I don't know who it came from, but yeah, sure, let's.
I mean, it's not, I mean, they just asked if they can talk about the structure about safety and security. And yes, it asked specifically about security officers, and yes, we have security officers. We don't have SROs this year, but I know our school board has been working on that, looking at that. You know, and I know Ms. Bassi and I, we've even talked about community mentors in our building, you know, what are alternatives to those things. But they were talking about as well, you know, about, you know, and it's an issue, you know, about kids going to elementary school, skipping middle school, and then going back to our high schools, right? And what would I say to those families? I feel I've done a really good job about trying to reconnect those families to our schools by providing tours, by coming to these meetings, by really trying to reinstall, you know, put this faith back in, you know, at Blair to show what we are doing, you know. But I think the best thing that we do is by telling our story. And I know, you know, Dr. Martin recently came into the building, Ms. Bassi came in the building, you know, by getting that word out. But yet, hey, listen, Blair isn't what it was 3-4 years ago. We have turned around some things, we have made some changes, but really it's bringing those families back, and we have brought those kids back. Not in the droves that we need. You know, I know, you know, a lot of the kids that aren't coming in, we don't always know, so I can't always reach out to them, but the families that do, but I think it starts with you folks, you know, saying, hey, listen, I talked with Dr. Doyle. He's very transparent. He's open about what the weaknesses are, what the strengths are, and those types of things. And then the last part of the question too was about what is the most pressing need. And I don't think I can answer that right now, because really it depends on the day, but it's always just, you know, making sure that we have enough folks to service our kids. That's really is always our pressing need. So I just wanted to make sure I responded to that part of it for you. So I'm done answering that question.
Appreciate it. All right, so I'm gonna.
One more question that came into us.
Oh, okay.
That Tanya, you might be able to answer. They were asking about Chromebooks, and I think it was.
Oh, yeah, so maybe.
More towards the elementary level, and that was me.
Yeah. So Ms. Felton, if you could comment on the magnitude of the use of the Chromebooks at Taylor, and whether or not you see that staying what it is, getting more, getting less, and what concerns or not you might have with the Chromebooks. Like.
Okay. Well, we do have Chromebooks for every child. Every child has a Chromebook that they take home and use at school. So we are a one-to-one device. However, how we use them has been a little tricky this year, because I think we've always had one foot as a hesitation of whether or not we were going to quarantine again or pandemic again. So that was a little difficult. And so we're trying to find that healthy balance at upper elementary of teaching our children how to learn use our online learning platforms of Canvas, where teachers can post assignments and the children can complete the assignment online and submit it online, you know, trying to get as paperless as possible when we become into the upper elementary grades. In the lower elementary grades, the Chromebooks are primarily used for our learning programs for math and reading. The district has adopted a math program called Admentum and a reading program called Lexia. And it's been important to use these programs because what they have been specifically designed to do is to identify the gaps in the child's learning. And so we've been able to kind of assess children very quickly on, you know, where they are for early literacy, where they are with numeracy, so that we can provide and kind of backfill those holes that may have been created due to some learning loss throughout the pandemic. And so as Dr. Doyle had shared, middle school uses Lexia as well, because there is a middle school version of the program as well. I do encourage our children to use it all the way from kindergarten through 5th grade, both programs, but I keep trying to reemphasize when they were launched, it kind of got a bad rap because it started with 20 minutes of this program and 20 minutes of that program, and it seemed like a lot of online time. But what the programs really emphasize is that the children gain units and skills. And so that's what we're trying to say. If you gain one unit, one skill, and then you're done for the week, you're done for the day. You know, we ask the children to gain 2 skills in Admentum in a 2-3 week period. So again, we're trying to find that healthy balance of that digital use. We are trying to make sure that we're using the learning programs that have been adopted by the district. we're trying to use our Chromebooks to minimize our paper and stop the copying and get things submitted online. So it's been an interesting balance. But next year, we're hoping to get all the Chromebooks, keep most of them in the school so that they're not being toted back and forth. And we're going to try to fine tune how we use them a little bit differently. I do recognize as a mom the impact screen time has had on our children, and I do believe and support that we have to readjust a few things to reduce some of that screen exposure at both at school and at home. But I also know that some of the learning programs that have been purchased, the children aren't sitting on YouTube videos and Googling and doing all those types of things, but they are learning how to use digital technology responsibly to facilitate their learning. In the upper grades, they can reserve a book for the library all the way down to kindergarten. They can go pick out their library book, click, I want this book, go pick it up and come and retrieve that book to take home. So there are a lot of good pieces to the technology. I just think we've got to recalibrate a bit so that we're making sure that our students aren't taking on too much time, and as well as using the programs that are designed to support their learning. So, as we look at next year, we can, maybe reduce some of the social distancing so that the children can go back to traditional learning centers and playing games on the carpets and floors, and we can get that back together again. I think that that's going to also impact how much time our students are spending, especially our younger children, on the Chromebooks. Our pre-K classrooms, they do not use the Chromebooks at all. So they are only there as an emergency if we were to quarantine again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that thorough answer. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to wrap up as quickly as I can here. I got a question, a Civic League question, and they said basically, hey, you shifted to a donation-based model as opposed to a dues-based model for the Civic League. How's that going? I asked Ryan Reese if he could, give me an update today. He said that we're at about $400 in January through March in donations, which if you assume that we're going to get steady donations throughout the year, that takes us to about $1,600 this year. I looked back over like 15 through 17, 18 timeframe and said, what was kind of the average donation level on the dues-based system? And we were averaging between $3,000 and $4,000 a year. So I say that and it makes it sound like, oh, well, we're not doing that well. Actually, I think we're doing really well, because if you look at our expenditures, we're doing just fine financially as a Civic League. Obviously, we would like to get more donations because we would like to offer more as a Civic League, but we're going to talk more about that in a future meeting. Kate and I got to the state is doing an air quality monitoring survey, a study, I guess we should say, related to Lambert's Point Coal Yard. I just want to get everyone to get onto our website or check the social media links to give feedback on where the monitoring stations should be throughout the community before the 25th. Again, we asked for feedback about the decision to adjust the hours on the Midtown Tunnel Gate. I'm hoping to get your feedback so we can better inform that conversation going forward. We're going back to regular Civic League board meetings, so we're going to do those each month. And so just thought it would be good for you to know that. The signs that we normally put up around the neighborhood to announce the upcoming meetings, we just purchased some more. Unfortunately, they weren't ready for this week, but next month you should see new signs around the neighborhood, and we won't be embarrassed of them this time. I really want to thank everyone that participated in the Great American Cleanup. We were able to get over to Taylor and do a lot of cleanup around there. But I will say that we have an Adopt a Spot cleanup this Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Thanks to Kate and Summer that are going to be organizing it. If you're interested, please show up to the corner of Redgate and Orapax between 1 and 2 p.m. and we'll send people out to the areas that were focus areas for this go round. The other thing that we did recently that was a huge success, thanks to Jim Affelt here in the neighborhood, was the Crepe Myrtle pruning event throughout the neighborhood. I thought it was an excellent turnout, and we look to keep doing that as we move forward, and it's only going to make our neighborhood better. I really just appreciate everyone taking part in it. If you've noticed the trees around the neighborhood, they do look a lot better. And Taz is back here. He had a fantastic idea. he noticed that the street signs in the neighborhood, I think they're either a dark green or a black color.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, they're exactly the good point. The point is that they're a little rough looking. They could use a paint job. And so we asked the city on his advice, hey, if you can't paint them, can we paint them? And they went through the risk analysis and they said, sure. And so we're going to put together a program where we're going to, over time, we're going to get around the whole neighborhood and we're going to repaint the signs again to make our neighborhood a better place. With volunteers. So we're going to be putting out information, and if you're interested in participating, it won't be a one-time thing. It'll be spread throughout the year. We'd love people to join us. And just lastly, more of a general statement, like we get a fair amount of feedback through the email, through social media posts and other such things. I can't encourage enough more feedback. Like we want to hear what your thoughts are so that we can make our neighborhood awesome and better relationship with the schools, better relationship with the Elizabeth River Trail, you name it, better relationships with other surrounding civic leagues. We're trying to build those relationships and see what opportunities exist to support Blair Middle School. And Dr. Doyle brought up, like, what relationship do you have with the Berkeley Civic League? Well, none, but like maybe it would be a good idea to have one because we share Blair Middle School. And those are kind of the ideas that come up through strong participation in the Civic League. And I encourage that. What do you want to know? What is going on in the city that you're curious about, that you want more information on? What do you want to discuss here at these meetings? And what do you want from the Civic League itself? What kind of social events do you want? What kind of things throughout the year do you want? We want to hear from you, and I appreciate everybody that gives us feedback. And with that, we are 42 minutes over, and I sincerely apologize. I said I was going to try not to run over, but failure. We'll try again next month. Appreciate everybody's attendance, and thank you.
The tank survey, the